Hi, this is Tisch Aitken, and it is Friday, May 10th, 2025. We have felt the Pluto station, like I talked about earlier in the week. It's stationed retrograde at 3 degrees and 49 minutes of the very futuristic sign of Aquarius. We feel that intensity 5 days before and 5 days afterwards. And it's during the station of an outer planet, whether it stations direct or retrograde, that big events occur. And Pluto is the farthest planet. It's the farthest most planet, and it takes 248 years to orbit. And again, we feel it 5 days before and 5 days afterwards. And it retrograded on the 4th. And yesterday on May 9th, Pluto's now in Aquarius, as most of you know. That's a very progressive sign of change, the future, new beginnings. And yesterday, the smoke came out of the Vatican, the white smoke, and it was announced for the first time in history that there's an American Pope, Robert Prevost from Chicago, Pope Leo the 14th. That is pretty powerful. We're talking about people in power. That's the biggest religious leader in the world. And again, Pluto in Aquarius, who would think it would be an American Pope, especially with such chaos going on in America right now. But maybe also what I'm hoping is that's an indication of some peace and hope, for the world, for the United States. I mean, the world, we all need hope, believe me. But that was a big deal. And now as we get into the weekend, so the moon's in Libra right now, and then it's going to go where it likes to be, and it's going to go void of course early on the 11th at 2:17 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time with a beautiful angle to Jupiter, the luckiest planet. Jupiter has now cleared its shadow, and it's going to be in Gemini just a little while longer because it's going to ingress into the cardinal water sign of Cancer. I'm excited about that. That's going to be on June 9th, and it will remain there through early July of next year. And Jupiter is exalted and fertile and abundant and just lovely in the sign of Cancer. But it's been in its detriment position in Gemini, since it entered Gemini last year. But going back to the moon trine Jupiter, that's a nice angle. But we're building up to an intense full moon in Scorpio that I don't think is all bad. I mean, the moon in Scorpio is in a difficult placement. And I know two people that actually have this moon in Scorpio at the very degree of the full moon. But the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus. We're still in Taurus season. It loves being in Taurus. It's very intense and emotional in Scorpio, but it's also very good for taking a deep dive emotionally into things you don't want to face, purging, releasing, letting go. It's a great time to cleanse your house, however you want to do it. Palo Santo, sage, cleanse your crystals, do some kind of a ritual to get rid of negativity. I'm working more with sound, like ringing bells, ring the bells. So do things to break up that energy and to release. And the thing that also happens on Saturday the 11th, today the 10th of the, no, it's the 9th. What am I doing here? The 9th? Yep, it's the 9th. Okay. It is not Friday the 10th. It's Friday the 9th. But I haven't slept that well last night. I feel energy. I feel energized. But the full moon and some other distractions that I won't mention that were outside of me. So Mercury is going to ingress into the fixed Earth sign of Taurus early tomorrow morning at 8:15 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Remember, Mercury retrograded in the middle of March at 9 degrees of Aries, and then it returned to Pisces at the very end of March, and then, it kept meeting up with a lot of challenges. Neptune and Saturn, while in Pisces, and it's gone back and forth. Well, it's finally out of Aries. It's very quick thinking and very bright in the sign of Aries, but we need new energy. We've dealt with Mercury, and Venus was retrograde a longer period of time, obviously, but they did the same dance. There were echoes of that same dance of Venus and Mercury retrograding in Aries, close in degree, returning to the last decan of Pisces, the late degrees, with challenges, with figuring out how to tap into the dream, Neptune, but work within the restrictions, Saturn, and trying to believe in the dream with Saturn and Pisces. So we've got change. We've got Mercury entering Taurus early on the morning of the 10th, May 10th, which is Saturday. And it's going to remain in Taurus because it's moving quickly through May 25th. And then it's going to enter Gemini where it's in its dignity. And that'll be during Gemini season and close to the day before the new moon in Gemini. So that's going to be very dynamic, vibrant energy. But right now, there's a purging energy because we also have, so we've got the full moon in Scorpio occurring on Monday the 12th, and it's going to occur at 12:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time at 22 degrees and 13 minutes of the fixed water sign of Scorpio, where that is a painful placement of the moon. It can be very difficult. It can be, it's a very perceptive and psychic placement, but it deals with heavy stuff. People that have it natally, and even when it's in Scorpio, rather, it can have that dynamic. But it's also good for taking inventory. Scorpio and Capricorn remind me of this in that Pluto rules Scorpio and Saturn rules Capricorn. And both planets don't mess around. With Pluto, you're eliminating things that aren't working. You got to get real. With Saturn, it's saying, hey, you're not learning this lesson. It comes up. You didn't pay your taxes. You got what's it called? Interest. You've got all the stuff you're not dealing with. So they're similar in that way. They don't let you get away with things. And so that to me, we've got Mercury squaring Pluto on the day of the full moon. And they're going to square one another at 1:23 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. That is like 27 minutes after the full moon occurs. And the thing I wanted to also say before I dive more into the full moon is that on Sunday, so when we have the moon enter Scorpio, it goes void on Saturday at 2:17 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time with a lovely angle to Jupiter. Then it's going to enter Scorpio on Saturday at 3:58 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And it's going to have disagreements with Mercury and Pluto. It's going to oppose Mercury. It's going to square Pluto. Well, it's going to be building up to that, or squaring Mars, rather. It's doing a lot. But then on the day of Sunday at 1:39 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, the only big aspect of the moon is it squares Mars. And my friend used to say, save your drama for your mama, but don't do it on Mother's Day, okay? That I wouldn't do that. And that's building up to the Mercury-Pluto square, which we're going to feel on Saturday and Sunday, particularly because Pluto rules the sign of Scorpio in modern astrology. This is where secrets could get uncovered, definitely on the world stage, but also in our own lives. Maybe we're getting a clue as to something we haven't figured out. Maybe something does get revealed. Scorpio can represent big secrets, but also there's a lot of magic in this full moon in Scorpio, even though the moon doesn't like being in Scorpio. We just had the Pluto station. We had Mercury meet up with Chiron, the wounded healer, earlier in the week in Aries. This is being bold to face wounds around self and identity because there's so many changes going in within ourselves and the world, and there is so much happening. And with Neptune newly in the sign of Aries, which is the sign of self and identity, we are all working to create a new spiritual self, a new idea of self, tapping into creativity and magic. But there's also a big theme this month around healing energy, which the moon in Scorpio can also be very good at, because again, this is not a sign that shies away from facing your shadow self or things that are very painful that you'd like to sweep under the rug. This is a time to face it. Mercury Chiron conjunction is still in effect. This is a time to be bold. Mars rules Scorpio in ancient astrology and Aries in modern. Face the fears, face the wounds. You will heal much more effectively. And this full moon in Scorpio, the other thing I feel, because on the day of the full moon, Mercury squaring Pluto, there will be some arguments, definitely. There could be some endings with that. It's a full moon in a sign of death, among other things. And Mercury squaring Pluto, there could be power struggles or big disagreements, but this is an opportunity to shift your thinking. Pluto's now in Aquarius. It's station retrograde, but it's not going back to Capricorn this time. It did last year. It did in 2023, but it will not this year. It's going to remain in Aquarius the next 19 years. And so now we're in a new chapter, new times. We've got Neptune in Aries. Neptune's not done with Pisces, but it will be next February. And the other thing with this full moon, the more you're releasing what's holding you back, we're all going to a new beginning. Pluto returned to Aquarius on November 19th of last year. Again, it's there for several years. Neptune ingressed into Aries, which is a big deal too, because Neptune takes 165 years to orbit. This occurred on March 30th. It retrogrades on July 13th, but it will not return to Pisces until October 22nd. So again, Neptune is in a sign of new beginnings, ego and self. How do you have the courage, Aries energy? How do you take action but still remain intact and aligned with your spirituality? This is not focused on self, which Aries can sometimes do. This is about co-creating together to heal together. Neptune will be going back and forth over the world point, which is 0 Aries. That's hitting all of us. It hits people on the world stage, and we've got a new beginning there, obviously, too. Neptune's still close to the world front, and we're seeing a big new beginning. And with the Pope being American, that is a huge deal. And then, we have Saturn ingressing into Aries on May 24th. Well, the new moon in Gemini is going to be May 26th. And so this is basically almost 2 weeks after this full moon in Scorpio that occurs on the 12th, saying, why don't you let go of things that are holding you back? I know there's been a lot of strife. There's a lot of very negative and dark and evil things in the world, and I'm not making light of that. But there have been other generations that have faced in their own way, not in their own way, faced things just as dire. And they got through it, and there were people that were pioneers. Aries is the sign, it can be a pioneer. It can move ahead and charge ahead. We've got Neptune entering Aries, Saturn entering Aries. They're going to be close in the sky this summer, but Saturn retrogrades on July 4th. It's going to get to 1 degree of Aries. I don't remember the minute. And then Neptune retrogrades on July 13th, and it gets to 2 degrees of Aries. But still, that's, they're going to be close. They're moving together, and they're going to meet up exactly on the world front on February 20th, meaning at the Aries point, at a degree that impacts big life events, world events, but also people in power. And we are the world. I'm not going to sing it, but we are. And so it hits all of us. So these are big deals. And I think that let's let go of the negative thinking as much as we can. How do we empower ourselves in a time that we know with Pluto and Aquarius, this is very much about unpredictability, but there's ingenuity that we haven't yet seen. There are going to be beautiful trines next year with Uranus and Pluto. We're going to have Jupiter in Cancer. That's right around the corner. Jupiter in Cancer is also going to be very fertile and abundant and creative and prosperous. I can't wait, as I said. And in this full moon chart, there is a yod. And what a yod means, it's like a long triangle. Jupiter in Gemini is forming what's known as a sextile to Chiron, the wounded healer. Chiron is in Aries. Jupiter is now at 23 degrees of Gemini on the day of the full moon. Chiron is at 24 degrees of Aries. So they're off by 1 degree. That's a sextile. But a yod is known also as a finger of God because those 2 points form, that sextile. But then each forms a quincunx, otherwise known as an inconjunct, meaning a challenging aspect to a third point. And in this case, it's the full moon in Scorpio, which occurs at 12:56 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 9:56 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And it's going to be at 22 degrees and 13 minutes of Scorpio. And you have Jupiter in Gemini, making a challenging aspect, an aspect of readjustment. You have Chiron, the wounded healer. Well, Moon in Scorpio, phenomenal for facing those deeply painful issues. Chiron is also forming an uncomfortable aspect that needs readjustment, but then Jupiter and Chiron are in harmony. And on I think it's on June 18th? May 18th, actually. Jupiter is going to sextile Chiron, and that's going to be very good. That's going to be nice. So I think that we just have to work with the energy of releasing the pain as much as we can. And there's still a lot of painful things going on. That's not shifting. And the other thing I wanted to say that's significant. So we've got the yod, which is a finger of God. There's a fated element. There's a spiritual alignment. And so there is a lot of spiritual and creative energy. Saturn will, by the end of the evening on May 12th, will get to 29 degrees of Pisces. That is the final degree of Pisces and of the zodiac. Again, it's that fixed star known as Shiat, which is not an easy degree. It's going to be there for 2 weeks, essentially, until it changes signs on May 24th and ingresses into the cardinal fire sign of Aries. It is in its fall position, so it's not so strong in Aries, but it's about taking a stand. It's about taking action. It's about moving ahead, more Aries energy. And it will remain in Aries through September 1st. It retrogrades on July 4th, but it then returns to Pisces, back to where it's going to be the evening of the full moon, dealing with depression, dealing with addiction. There is a big mental health epidemic right now, and it's intense. And so shedding the layers, final degrees of the zodiac. A lot of people, I know this month is easier because we had Mars clear its shadow. Remember, this full moon, Venus is still in its shadow. It doesn't clear its shadow until May 15th, 3 days after the full moon. It finally gets to 10 degrees and 50 minutes of Aries, where it retrograded on March 1st. And then Venus will enter the sign of Taurus on June 6th, where it loves to be. It rules the sign of Taurus. But for now, we want it clearing its shadow. And this time, Venus sextiled Pluto 3 times. And it did so within a couple of days of the Pluto station. This is evolving our values in a new world. This is evolving our talents and skills, how we make money, how we partner with others. There's so much isolation and alienation. But Saturn at that last degree of Pisces is not an easy placement. I've said that before. I'll say it again. I'll say it a lot until it finally leaves there next year. Okay? But let's also tap into the fact that there's a lot of healing opportunity. At the end of the month, Aries, the goddess of discord, is going to meet up with Chiron, the wounded healer. And that will be on May 26th. That's the day of the new moon in Gemini. And they will pair up 2 more times in early October and mid-March of next year. That's about having confidence. Aries is Mars' sister. She's not a wallflower. She shakes things up because she wants us to evolve, kind of like Uranus. Uranus brings a lot of change. And in the full moon chart, we've got Aries and Chiron very close together. We also have the sun not far away from Uranus and Taurus. They're going to meet up a last time in our lifetime on May 17th. And then next year, when the sun is in Taurus, it won't meet up with Uranus. It will meet up when it's in Gemini. So because Uranus is dipping into Gemini this year from July 7th through November 6th. And that is very exciting. That is an innovative energy. It's going to like being in Gemini a lot more because both are cerebral air signs. This brings us more possibilities, new ways to connect, new ways to build community. We need to build community. And I think that's important. I think the Saturn-Neptune story is very important because things are dissolving. And Saturn's at the last degree of Pisces. That's underscoring that as well. We've got the full moon in conjunct Chiron and Jupiter. There's a lot of healing meant to be done, but also, this is where we have opportunities. There's a spiritual healing going on too. And I think that's Chiron, the wounded healer, very prominent this month as well. And what else do I want to say? There was something, I wanted to say the nodes of fate. The North Node is now at 25 degrees of Pisces. Well, remember last September of 24, we had a total lunar eclipse on September 17th at 25 degrees and 40 minutes of Pisces. Now the North Node of Destiny is exactly where that lunar eclipse was last fall. We're releasing things we've been working with for a while, and we've had big shadows. Mars was retrograde through the end of February, but it didn't clear its shadow till last Friday, a week ago. Venus, that's also another story. It loves being in Pisces, but it didn't get a chance to really work its magic this time. But we are prepping up for the new. Saturn ingressing into Aries. We are going to be cosmic, peaceful warriors. Neptune in Aries brings a new spin because Neptune's never been in Aries in our lifetime. And so a lot to think about, a lot of purging and releasing. But the last thing, Mercury square Pluto, so close to this full moon. Letting go of old thinking and embracing new ways to heal yourself, new ways to think about things, and certainly to, not shy away from the things that are bothering you. That's not healthy. But trying to tap into magic because Jupiter entering Cancer is magic. Uranus entering Gemini, I feel that's going to be magical. So good luck, more to come, and have a very healing and purging full moon.